Hello everyone, welcome to my channel where we talk about mangas and sometimes books. As for today's video, I have the reading wrap up for the month of April and there's a lot to cover. That is why I decided to just do April by itself and then I'll do another video for May and June. So in the month of April, I read a total of 26 books, 15 fantasies, 5 romances, and 6 thrillers slash horrors. And yeah, there's a lot to cover, there's a lot to talk about. And here I have all the books that I own in physical version, and the ones that I don't own, I will be putting a picture of the cover of the book. So, as per usual, I have my iPad like right here, like right there. So if you guys see me looking this way, it's because I'm looking at what books I've read, and we are going to go in the order that I've read them, starting from the very first day of the month up until the end. So yeah, let's get started. Starting off the month, I read Piranesi by Susan Clark. This is the cover. I do own a physical copy, and yeah, I I've always been interested in this book, but I always felt a bit intimidated by it. I felt like I wasn't going to understand what the book was trying to tell me. But once I read it, it's one of my favorite books now. But I give this book 5 stars, and we essentially follow Piranesi, who is currently stuck living in like this labyrinth type of house where there's a lot of rooms, and each room has a different setting. There's a room where the ocean is kind of like inside the room. There's a room with like statues. There's a room with a lot of plants. There's a room that's a bit empty. There's a room that's like a library. And we just follow Piranesi going to his day-to-day life, trying to figure out how this labyrinth works. And there is another person with him who Piranesi calls the other man, and this man is always calling upon Piranesi to ask him questions about the house that they're currently at. And Piranesi, he's kind of like Piranesi's boss. Um, if you can hear that, they're celebrating the FIFA World Cup at the moment. But as I was saying, he's kind of like the boss of Piranesi because he's always asking Piranesi to do certain jobs and to figure out certain things around the house. And that's basically the surface of this story, because the more you go into the story, the more you move on, you start to uncover a lot of things. The reality that Piranesi has been living in, the lies that have been told to Piranesi, and it's just a fascinating story. Piranesi to me is such a pitiful character because everything that has been told to him, everything that has been done to him, I feel pity for him, but he is such a resilient character. I really enjoy this story. Um this is I think this is a fantasy, like literally no lit fantasy. Yeah, I really like this one. I recommend it, and if you were also intimidated by it, don't be. It's such a great story. Once you get into it and once you start to unravel everything that this story has to say, it's so good. It's fascinating. I really enjoyed this one, and I gave this, like I said, 5 stars. The other book after Piranesi is the second book in the Prince Captive series, and that is Prince Gambit by C.S. Pacat. And in my last video, I also showed this one instead of the first book, so I apologize for that. But this is the second book in the series, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. As the story goes on, we start to see more about the characters. We start to learn more about the world and the like political play that has been happening since the very beginning. And I really enjoyed this book. Yeah, it's so good. This is a fantasy, but it actually focuses more on the fantasy and political aspect of the story and less on the romance between the characters. Although towards the end of this second book, we do follow more on like the feelings and the romance that is about to develop between both characters. And I cannot wait to read the third book. And like I said, I give this 4.5 stars. And next off, I read the third volume on whatever this series is called, but this is Sky Shade by Alex Astor. And I have to be completely honest, I enjoyed the first and second book of a lot, and which is why I decided to continue with this third book. But this third one, just it was not it. I feel like the story was getting dragged on so much, and at some point I just stopped caring about the characters. I stopped caring about the plot, and I at some point I just wanted the story to be over. And that's bad because it usually means you're not liking or enjoying a story as much as I wanted to, and that happened to me with this third book. Um, yeah, so if you haven't read the what is it called, Lilac series, don't. Um, yeah, don't. I, in my opinion, I enjoyed it. Like I said, the first and second because I was going through a reading slump, and the first and second book were the books that brought me out of the reading slump. So they kind of have a special place for me, but uh, yeah, no, they're not good. They're not good. Um, yeah, I don't think they're worth it, and I really did not enjoy this book, which kind of sucks because I was having fun with the series. But in conclusion, in my opinion, Grimm and what was the name, Oro? Grimm and Odo get together and they live happily ever after and forget about Isla. And that's how the series ends for me, in my opinion. And moving on to the other book that I read after this one was Shield of Sparrows, which I have right here. This is going to be heavy. So I ended up reading Shield of Sparrows. This is by Deviny Perry, and look at the edges are so pretty. But basically, in this book, we follow Odessa, who is the princess of this kingdom, who's like they have like a treaty with another kingdom where one of their princes needs to marry the other kingdom's prince to kind of like battle monsters and kind of like seal the deal on like this tradition that has been going on for ages. And so Odessa's sister has been the princess that has been trained to marry this prince. But when the prince gets to this kingdom, to Odessa's kingdom, he decides that he's not going to marry Odessa's sister, but he's going to be marrying Odessa. And that's how the story starts. And that's how basically the entire book, we follow Odessa on this journey to follow this prince to his kingdom. And that's basically everything that happens in this first book. We follow their journey to this kingdom and of like following um like the battles that happen, because there's a lot of like monsters that are going to be appearing throughout the entire journey to, oh my god, what was his name, hold on, as per usual I forget characters names. Do, 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 do. So okay, so it doesn't say the name of the male character, which sucks, but yeah, no, I don't remember his name. But he is known as the Guardian, and yeah, we basically follow them, their journey and the battles they have to go through, fighting monsters, which is basically the entire reason this uh treaty, this treaty is there for, to like secure a shield that is going to stop, say, monsters from coming into Odessa's kingdom, something like that. Yeah. So, like I said, that's the entire book until we get to the part where Odessa and the Guardian arrive at his kingdom, and that's where things start to unravel a lot more because we learn that the king, also known as the father of this Guardian dude, is like very evil. He's like burning down libraries because he doesn't want secrets to come out. What secrets? I have no idea. That's pretty much, I think, that is going to be covered in the second book that has already come out. I have yet to read it, but I enjoyed this book quite a bit. I feel like it was a bit repetitive, especially with the whole like travel thing and like all the battles felt a bit of rinse and repeat at one point, and that is why I gave this book 3.5 stars, but I did enjoy it enough to want to continue with this story. And I'll hopefully I will be reading the second book soon. I feel like the like atmosphere and the entire like world in this book, it kind of gives for us to read it in like the month of August, like autumn season. Yeah. And moving on, this is a book that I don't own, but this is Zone Entry. This is by Mia Kinley, and this is a romance where we follow Caleb and Nick. So these two are, I think, if I remember correctly, they're hockey players. They're hockey players, and they have been like enemies on different teams for a while now. That is, until one of them gets transferred to the college and they end up as roommates. Now, because they are roommates, they kind of need to like get along, not only as roommates but also as now teammates, and that's how the story begins. There's like a whole reason why they don't get along. There's It's basically a misunderstanding between both of them, but once the like entire situation gets resolved, the romance is so cute and really wholesome. And I really enjoyed this one. There's not a lot to say more than that. Yeah, it's just a hockey romance with college students who have their issues, their problems, but you need to discover them as the story moves on. So, I gave this book 3.5 stars. And moving on to a romance, I think here it is. I also read these romance by Sarah Adams. This is The Enemy, and this is it's your classic romance with a very stubborn woman who falls for another very stubborn man, and there's a bit of a misunderstanding because they used to go to high school together, and during their graduation there was like a maybe kiss, but the guy kind of like moved away from her, and now she has been hurt and has been keeping that hurt, that like rejection in her for the past however many years until he comes back, because her best friend is marrying his friend, and he is like the best man of the safe friend, and she's like the bridesmaid, and now they have to kind of get along in order to um show like be there for their friends and their wedding, and just yeah, it was a lot of fun. um at some point it did feel like just talk, just talk like the mature adults you're supposed to be, but it was a fun read. I really enjoyed it, and I have come to realize that I really like Sarah Adams romances, and you guys will see what I'm talking about soon, because I gave this book 3 stars. Like I said, it felt a bit repetitive at some points, which is why it's a 3. And yeah, I did end up liking it. And if you're looking for a cute, wholesome romance that's like closed a door, I would recommend this book. It's also a bit like like enemies, not enemies, like a hate to love type of relationship. Next off, I also read We Used to Live Here by Marcus Killiwer. I think I mispronounced that, but it's this one. This is a horror story. We follow two characters. One of them is Charlie and Eve, and they have recently bought a house, and they are currently remodeling the house. They're like living their life. They're happy with one another. That is until one day, a man shows up at the the door, and he knocks. And I think it's Evie. Yeah. So Evie hears the knock, and so she goes up to the door. She opens it, and this guy is like, "Hey, I used to live here. Like about to move out of state with my family, and I was talking to my children about my old house, and they're kind of curious, and I kind of want to like show them around. Is it okay if we come inside?" Evie, one thing you have to know about her is that she is a people pleaser. She doesn't know how to say no. And Charlie, her wife, or like her girlfriend, I think they're married. I don't quite remember that part, but her girlfriend is like the more like she knows how to say no to people, right? So she knows how to like put a stop to things. And so Evie is struggling to say no to this man and his family who are like outside, and there's like snow falling. It's really cold, and so she doesn't want to say no, but it's super strange for like a random person to come up to your house and be like, "Hey, can I go inside?" So Evie calls Charlie, and Charlie is like, "You need to learn how to say no by for yourself. You need to learn how to put a like stop to things." There's a word, I'm forgetting it. And Charlie's like, "It's up to you." And so Evie, being the people pleaser that she is, she allows them inside her house, and that is where things start to go strange. One of the kids goes missing, and then they found her, and then the people are not leaving. There's like a snowstorm, and now they have to stay there, and everything starts to unravel, and it's so fascinating. I really enjoy this. I'm going to be completely honest and say that I was about to DNF this because I was not um I'm not sure if it's the writing style or the way the story was being told to me. I was not liking it a lot, so I decided to switch to the audiobook, and the audiobook made a whole difference for me, and I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I really recommend this, especially if you like stories that deal with liminal spaces. And that one and Piranesi also had deals with liminal spaces. So I recommend that one as well. And next up, we are switching and we are going to talk about a YA fantasy that I have right here. So this is a YA fantasy. This is The Dragon's Promise by Elizabeth Lim, and this is the second book to Six Crimson Cranes. And we basically continue to follow the story of, again, I forgot her name, Princess Shiori and her dragon Ailong. So we continue to follow Shiori's journey through the world of the dragons, especially the dragon king who lives in the ocean, and Ailong, who is the dragon she meets in the Six Crimson Cranes book, and like everything that has to deal with that, and like the promise that she made to Ailong, and Shiori's journey through this entire new world. I really enjoyed this. One thing about Elizabeth Lim's um storytelling is she's so imaginative, and I can picture everything she writes, like her world building, the characters, the worlds, the different worlds she has created. I always can like picture them in my head so clearly. And yeah, I love Elizabeth Lim's books, especially her YA fantasies. I feel like they're really fascinating and they're not boring at all. They're a breath of fresh air. They're they're so unique and so imaginative, like I said, and so like whimsical and like magical. Yeah, I 100% recommend Elizabeth Lim's stories if you want to read like a YA fantasy. You can never go wrong with one of her books. And I give this book 4 stars. Moving on, I also read The Good, the Bad, and the Auntie. This is the last book in the Aunties series. This is by Jesse Q. Sutanto, and this is basically a like romance mystery type of book. Um, the first book is Dial A for Aunties, which is a book that I really enjoyed, and we continue to follow Maddie and Nathan. This is after, I think it's after their wedding. Yeah, after the wedding, Mary and Nathan are now in their honeymoon, but things get a bit complicated um, when there's like a gift issue. Like they're like celebrating New Year, Chinese New Year, and there's a whole problem with one of the gifts that was meant to go to like a mafia guy. And now Mary and the aunties need to get back that gift to give it back to the the other guy. Anyways, it was it was fun. It was a fun read. It wasn't the best in the series in my opinion. I really enjoyed the first book a lot more than I did this one, but it was a solid it was a solid read. It was entertaining. It was fun. It was very campy. And I give this book 3 stars. And next up is another book that I don't own, and that is Melt His Heart. This is by J.D. Angels. And sorry, I need to keep the microphone like right here so you guys can hear clearly. But Melt His Heart is a romance where we follow a hockey player and a figure skater. And the figure skater is there to train and get better at his sport, and he has to share the ice with a hockey team. And that's basically it. It's a very cute romance. Yeah, that's all I have to say. It was a cute romance. um we kind of see how they sort of meet, they kind of become friends, and then they kind of start going out. And yeah, I gave this book 3.5 stars. There wasn't not anything special about it, anything that's like new to the genre, or any sort of new like type of romance that I've read before. It was just a really entertaining read. It was fun to read, and yeah, I like I like I, I liked it. The other book that I read is The Tenant. This is by Frida McFadden, and this is a mystery. And as I've said before, I either really enjoy her books or really hate them, and this is a I hate type of book. I saw the plot twist from like chapter 5. I knew where the story was going to go, and the moment that it was revealed that it was where I thought the story was going, it just wasn't fun. And it felt like it was dragged out for no reason. I feel like this could have been better as a novella. So if you haven't read The Tenant, we basically follow this guy whose name is Peter, and he lives with his girlfriend, but because of a mistake at his job, he is now fired, and now he's kind of like dealing with like having to pay rent and all utilities in at their apartment. And so they decide to rent one of the rooms that they have, and in comes Whitney, who she's like really nice. She goes there, but the Peter starts to have beef with her because apparently she's like eating his cereal. He's like, this girl is using his body soap and finishing it completely, and it's just small things that kind of like gather the more the story goes on, like her eating their food and something like that. And Peter starts to be very mean to her without actual evidence that prove that it is her who is doing all of this. And yeah, again, very obvious where the story was going to go. So I didn't like it. Also being in the perspective of Peter was like a hostage situation for me. I do not like being in a man's perspective for that long. And the entire book is in his perspective. So no thank you. Did not like that one, and I gave that one 5 stars. I give it like 1 star. Um, where is it? Oh, here it is. So the next book that I have, I felt like the tenant was putting me on a reading slump. So I decided to read a favorite book of mine, and that is this book, which is Ghost of Lies by Alice Winters. This is a supernatural romance. We basically follow Hiro, who has the ability to see ghosts, and we follow Maddox, who is a detective. Now, because of his ability to see ghosts, Hiro is always stumbling upon criminal crime scenes, and Maddox is always the detective that ends up at the scene as a detective. And so he's always finding Hiro there, and now he's suspicious of Hiro. Like, is Hiro the one committing all these crimes? What is happening? That is until one day, in the middle of the woods, Hiro sees a ghost who is like asking him for help, and he decides to leave his card on the side of the road to go and see what is happening. That is where he finds that a man is killing a woman. Well, he has killed the woman, and so he tries to stop this man, but the man gets away. And moments later, the police arrive, and by the police I mean Maddox arrives, and he gathers Hiro. He puts him in his car, and then Hiro is taken into the police for questioning, and that is how they have met, how the first interaction goes, and that is when things start to unravel because we learn that there might be a serial killer on the loose that might have something to do with something in Hiro's past, something to do with the death of Hiro's brother. And now Hiro wants to be involved in this investigation, but obviously Maddox, being who he is, he's like, nope, you're not going to be part of this. Like, I don't want you in my team. But Hiro, with his ability, he manages to become friends with the mayor of the city, and this mayor is like, what can I do to repay you for helping me with this? And Hiro's like, I have a way. You can repay me. And so thanks to the help of the mayor, Hiro now works with the police as a consultant. And by the police, I mean he works with Maddox, who Maddox is not very happy about. But things start to develop. There's like a bit of friendship. There's like the sexual tension between both characters. And this is the book that brought me out of the almost reading slump that the tenant almost put me in. I always enjoy reading Alice Winter's stories. Her stories are so fun, and I really like the fact that she focuses a lot on the actual plot of the story, and then the romance between the characters is kind of like a side project, but it does get the attention that it needs. And I gave this book 5 stars. Again, one of my favorite books. I feel like it's always going to be a 5 star for me. And next up, I read the third and last book in the, I don't know what the name of the series is, but the last book is Kingdom of the Fear. This is by Carrie Maniscalco, and I was not expecting that. So if you haven't read, what was the name? Kingdom of the Wicked and Kingdom of the Curse is the first and second book, and this is the third one. And the way this book ended, I was not expecting for that twist that happened between what's her name? Emilia and Victoria. Like, I had no idea that's where the author of the story was going to go. but I really enjoyed it. I don't want to talk a lot about this book because it is the third one. It is the end of a series. So for those who haven't read it, I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. Just know that the way it ends, it's so good. It's amazing, and I really like the fact that we get to continue with the other characters, like the other demons from the first story, the first and second story, in her adult fantasy series. And I cannot wait to read those. I cannot wait to get back into this world, this magical world that Kerry Manscalco built. So I give this book 5 stars as well. And next up, I read another romance by Sarah Adams. And like I said, I've come to realize I really like her books. And I read When in Rome, and we basically follow a singer who is trying to get a break from being known everywhere she goes. She's trying to go into a place where she's not known as usual, where she can walk around and no one's going to yell her name and ask for photos, for photographs, and autographs is what I meant. And yeah, so she decides to go on a break to Kentucky, Rome. I'm pretty sure is that where she went? Yeah, Kentucky, Rome. So her car all of a sudden stops in the middle of the road, and a guy comes out of his house. He like, hey, do you need help? Obviously, she's not trustworthy of this guy because she doesn't know him, and like he could be, I don't know, a someone dangerous. And so he's like, let me just, let me just help you. Like, I'm not, I'm not, I'm not like that. But she's like, she's really not wanting to talk to this guy. That is until he goes back into his house and he calls a woman who's like, hey, can you vouch for me that I'm not weird to this woman who obviously needs help? She's like cooking herself in her car. She doesn't want to come out because she feels like she might be in danger with me. And so he goes out. He gives this woman, this girl, what was her name? Amelia. She gives Amelia the phone, and she talks to the woman this guy called, which I keep calling him this guy, Noah, who Noah called. And so this woman's like, hey, I've known this Noah since he was a baby. He is not weird. He's the farthest thing from weird. You are safe being with him. And Amelia's still like, I don't trust you. Like, I don't know you. I have no reason to trust you, but I'm going to try. And so that's how they meet. And from then on, you kind of get to see Amelia and Noah interact. And Noah is obviously not wanting to deal with her because he feels like once he learns Amelia's a pop star, he feels like she's going to be like really high maintenance. But Amelia is not that. He got the whole idea of Amelia wrong, as well as Amelia got a whole idea wrong from Noah. Like, and once they get to know one another, their romance is so cute. It's so cute. This book made me believe in romance, in love. I really enjoy this book, and there's something about a romance book is the fact that both characters communicate like adults. They express themselves. They're not afraid to be who they truly are with one another. And I really like that. I really enjoy that. Um, I don't quite remember if there was like a misunderstanding between both of them that never got resolved with both of them speaking out their feelings. Yeah, I really like this book. This was a 4 stars. I usually just give romance books like 3 stars, never a four. And hopefully, I one day I will find a Sarah Adams book that is 5 stars. But for now, this is a four, and I recommend. The other book that I've read and that I don't own is A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Bacon by T. Kane Fisher. I think this is not YA, but it's also not adult. I think this is like a middle grade fantasy, but it was so good. It was so entertaining. We basically follow 14-year-old Mona, who is a wizard, and her magic is basically all in baking, but she lives in this little town where at the moment wizards or anyone that has magic are not safe because there is someone out there who is killing off magic with people that have magic, and so Mona is not safe. And then there's like a whole issue when one morning Mona goes into her auntie's auntie's bakery and she's like starting to prepare things. She wants to prepare like everything that needs to go into the oven so that when the store opens everything is ready for them to sell. And so Mona gets to the shop, and that is where she finds a body laying down on the concrete of her kitchen, and she starts freaking out. She calls to her auntie, and then because of that reaction that she has, someone calls the the patrols, and they get there. They take Mona into custody because apparently to them Mona was the one that killed this person, even though there's no actual evidence. And she goes taken into the kingdom, the palace of the king of the queen. There's no king. Of the palace of of the queen, and that's where things the story starts to develop because we learn about this guy who's like offing off magical people, and that Mona is not safe in this town. And yeah, it's it's a really cute story. There's like a whole mystery. There's a lot going on in the story, and I really like how Tim Fisher paced out the story. And I gave this book 4.5 stars. And talking about Alice Winter again, I read her last book in the VRC vampire related crime series. This is the last book, and that is How to Entice a Fiend. And I, I forgot about this. So we basically follow Matt, who is, how should I, if there's someone who has read this, you will know who I'm talking about. But like trying to explain it to someone who might not have read the story is kind of difficult. So we basically follow Matt, who is like a higher up, who is in charge of making sure the investigators from the BCR are like following the rules, and he's there to investigate after everything that has happened from the first book up to the fifth one. He is there to investigate everything that happened, especially in the fifth book. And in comes Ender, who is the villain from the fifth book, who is not actually the villain. We learned in the fifth book that there was a higher up in the villainous type of thing, that the investigators from the BCR were working for the villain. And so this is kind of like the fallout and the conclusion to everything that has happened from the first book to to this book, which is the last one. And I think that made no sense. But just know, if you want to read a book that has vampires, there's mysteries to solve, and there's romance between different characters. Yeah, so each book follows a different romance between different characters. The main couple is Finn and Marcus, I think it's his name. I've read those books like maybe 5 times. Yeah, it is. It is Finn and Marcus. Those are like the main couples that get like maybe 3 books in the series, and then we have other books following the other couples and other mysteries. But the mysteries do come together in the fifth book and this sixth one. So yeah, and I gave that book 4.5 stars. And okay, so after reading Alice Winters again, I decided to read Flight of Magpies by K.R. Charles. This is the second book in the Magpies series, and this is a fantasy where we are in the I forget what year we're in, but it's like 1800s England, and there's like magic, there's people that have magic, and there's the whole like what are they called? Like the police that are in charge of like controlling those people that have magic. And we basically continue to follow, what was his name? Um Lord Crane and Stefan, who is part of the like magical police. And there's Lord Crane, who is not magical, but he has kind of like a lineage that has magic thanks to like a deal they made with like, sorry, with a magpie, something like that. The stories are really short, so you don't get a lot of like world building. They're really fun. They're fun to read. Because each book follows a different mystery, but we continue to follow the same couple throughout three books, which is, like I said, Stephen and Lord Crane. It's been a while since I've read the first book, which is why I cannot explain what the story is about. But I did read this one, and again, we follow a different story. Not story, but like mystery. But we do follow the same couple, and we continue to see how their relationships grow as the books go move on. This is the second one. There is a third one, and that's where the story ends. But overall, this is a fun, entertaining fantasy series with a bit of mystery, and I would say I gave this book 3 stars. Next up is a mystery thriller fantasy. I have no idea where the book goes, but that is The One by John Mars. As I've said before, John Mars is a author that I really enjoyed, especially his mystery thrillers. One of my favorite books by him is Keep It in the Family. If you want to read a very twisted um, thriller where like you have no idea where the story is going to go, I would recommend reading this one. So I was very excited to read The One by John Mars, which basically the premise is there's an app that will connect you to your soulmate. Um, but what if your soulmate is not who you think it should be, basically? And it sounded super interesting, but I thought it was going to be a mystery thriller, that things were going to go a different way that the story actually goes into. It feels more of a romance, which I was not expecting that. Um, and some of the romances were not it. They were not it. There were there was one where like the woman, like she meets her soulmate, but then that person dies, and like she becomes so obsessed with this guy, and like and like and something they never had because they were barely talking and getting to know one another, that she decides to meet his family. She attends the funeral. She becomes part of this guy's family, um which was super creepy, but in a way it felt like the author wanted me to believe that this was in a way romantic. And yeah, it just gave me the ick, and there were like other stories that were not it. Yeah, I didn't really like this book, and so I give this book 1 star. Like I said, I was expecting something more. I was expecting a thriller, but I felt like I was given more of a romance with like fantasy, science fiction, who knows. Yeah, so I give this book 1 star, and I got rid of the copy that I owned. And next up, let's move on to something I actually like, and that was this one. And that was The Maid's Secret. This is the third book in the Maid series. This is by Nita Prose. So if you haven't read The Maid, I would recommend. This is more of a cozy mystery type of book. We follow um Molly, Molly the maid. So we've in the first book we follow Molly and we get to know her, and she works at this hotel where I think someone gets murdered at a room, and now she kind of like has to investigate because the police are trying to pin it on a worker from that hotel, but like no, it wasn't there. And in this one we continue to follow Molly, and in this one there's like a TV show that is coming into the hotel where they evaluate um like vintage items. And so Molly has a egg that was given to her by her grandma, and she wants to know if whether or not the egg has any value other than the sentimental one that she has. And there's a whole thing that unravels because of the egg, and it was a fun entertaining story. It was a very good end to this series. I think this is the end of the book, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really like the whole mystery aspect of the story, and I really like Molly as a character. She's such a fun character to read. um I will say that the first and second book were one of my favorite books, and this kind of felt a bit mid. Like it wasn't necessary to add another book to the series, but it was added and I still enjoyed it, but not as much as I enjoyed the first and second. And so I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I feel like the mystery kind of like also dragged on for no reason. So yeah, I feel like I would have liked this book a lot more if it had been a novella, but I still enjoyed it. So I give it 3.5 stars. It was still quite entertaining. And let's move on to a favorite series of mine. Um, I found the audiobook on Libby. I was bored and I was wanting to read a fantasy and well listen to a fantasy. But and like I found this book and so I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a try. Like it sounds interesting. Um it deals with like urban legends from like Europe and like I don't know what place, but it deals with urban legends, like I said, and kind of mixes them into the fantasy. And there's like a whole society that deals and kills these like legendary creatures, kind of like the Baba Yaga. And there's like I think they're vampires, but they are known as they are described. They have a different name. And there's La Llorona was also talked about in this, which is like a ghost who cries for her children. Um, and there's like a whole legend of that in Mexico, which I found when La Llorona was brought up in this book. I was so surprised. I was like, oh, I was not expecting that. And that book is When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. And this is a very short fantasy novella. I really enjoyed it. Like I mentioned before, I really like the fact that there's like a whole mystery that we are following with our main character whose name is Dimitri. Is it Dimitri? Yeah. Who Dimitri is like part of this society that has to like kill these monsters because they create chaos and they kind of hurt regular people. But at the moment, Dimitri is going through something, and that is that he wants to leave this society because he feels like a lot of the time the society is killing innocent creatures or like innocent people that have never committed a crime against other humans, but the society sees them as what they are, which is monsters, and that's all they see. And they think that by getting rid of them, they're getting rid of something bad, even if those people haven't, again, committed anything against a human. And so Dimitri wants to get away from this society, but the only way to get away, the only way to get away from, say, society is by like removing um the the part of his soul that has been committed into this society. I hope that makes sense. And the way this part of his soul is brought up, yeah, is like a sword that comes out from his back, which is painful. And so Dimitri is currently on like this journey to try and find Baba Yaga, who is the only person who can help him to get rid of this weight that sits upon his shoulders. And throughout his journey, we meet what was her name? I forgot her name, guys. I'm sorry. I tend to forget characters' names. If you ask me about a book, I'll let you know what it's about, but don't ask me about the characters' names because they're gone. So Allah. So he meets Allah, who is part of the Strega, I think is what they're called. I think they're vampire. No, not vampires. I don't know what they're called. I don't know what they are, but they are known as Strega, and they feed upon the fear of humans. So Allah kind of works at this like cinema where they only play horror movies, which was fascinating. And throughout this journey of like him trying to meet Baba Yaga, he ends up meeting another guy who, let's see if we can find. Oh, his name is Nico. Okay, so Nico is also part of, I think he's a male Strega, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he kind of like joins the team with Ala, Dimitri, and Nico, and there's a whole thing between them. So when I was reading this, I was really enjoying and liking the story. I was liking the whole, like I said, the whole like folklore and like horror folklore. And like I feel like we all know who Baba Yaga is. Um, I was really liking the fact that the author decided to add those um stories to her own story. And I was really liking it, and I thought, oh my god, like I feel I wish this was like a romance, because let me tell you, when Dimitri and Nico meet, there's a sort of tension that the author managed to put into page. I was like, oh my god, like I want Nico and Dimitri to end up together. But I thought this was going to be like a straight romance. I thought it was going to be I thought Dimitri was going to end with Allah, but color me surprised. This is so good. Color me surprised when there's a moment where Dimitri and Nico kind of have to share a room because they continue to like move on with the journey. And when Dimitri and Nico share a room, there's like a moment where it's like, oh my god, Dimitri and Nico are going to end up together. And they do. They do. That's how this first book ends, with Dimitri and Nico being something. We don't know yet. It hasn't been established, but there is going to be something between Nico and Dimitri as the story goes on in the second book. And I enjoyed this book so much. I gave it 5 stars. It was so good. It was super entertaining. Yeah, 5 stars. And I would recommend for you guys, if you enjoy stories that add folklore from different like countries into one, and they somehow manage to make it cohesive. I would recommend this one. And the other book that I read after that one is a book that I don't own, but it's the Vampires Werewolf Bodyguard. This is by Tavia Lark. This is a romance. And so we in this story we basically follow Simon, who is a sorry. So we basically follow Simon, who is a werewolf. Nope. Simon is the vampire, and he has been attacked, and now he needs protection from what we still don't know. It's the very beginning of the story, but his creator, who is another vampire, of course, it's like, okay, you need protection, so I'm going to get you that, so that while you sleep during the day, you have someone that is there to protect you. And who better than a werewolf? So that is how he meets Cody, who is now his bodyguard. But there's a bit of tension between both of them, but they obviously don't get along because one is a werewolf, one is a vampire. They have different views. But throughout the entire story, Cody is trying to help Simon figure out who is the person that is trying to hurt him. And yeah, it's super interesting. It was really fun. It was a fun read, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. And next off, I read a horror book that, I'm not going to lie, I started reading this book in March, and I was so close to DNFing the book because I just couldn't get into the way the author wrote the story. I just couldn't get into it. Um, I don't know what it was. I felt like every time I picked up the book, I was going into a reading slump. But I am glad I didn't DNF this book, because once I got into like maybe 15% into the book, that's where I got comfortable with the the writer's storytelling. It's not storytelling, it's like the way she writes. I got comfortable and got along with her writing style, that I decided that I wasn't going to DNF, and that's where the story also kind of picks up. And I ended up giving this book 5 stars. It was that good. And that is Bad Eater and Other Names for Cora Sang. This is by Kali Lee Baker, and this is a horror book. And I'm so happy because it actually has horrific elements where we get like ghost. So shit. So if you don't know what Kora Bad Eater and Other Names for Cora Sang is, um so we basically follow Coda, who at the beginning of the story she sees her sister in a very traumatic, horrific way. She essentially gets pushed into the trail wrecks, and that's where the train comes in, and her head no longer attached to her body. And so she sees all of this. Now all of this happens during the COVID time, and where there was a lot of like xenophobia towards um Asians, and she kind of has to deal with this wherever she goes, right? And then this happens to her sister, and she kind of goes into a depression, and she has two aunties. One of them is from her mother's side, and the other one is from her father. So one thing about Kota is she is half American, she is half Asian. So from her auntie's mother's side, she's like very religious. She goes to church every single Sunday. And from her father's side, her auntie is very like traditions, like traditionalist. She follows all the Chinese traditions, and one of them being the Hungry Ghost Fest, where the way I would describe it is, if you're from Mexico, it's kind of like the Dia de Muertos, where they kind of have like shrines for their deads. They create their dead's favorite food, and there's like a whole thing. So, what happens when you don't follow everything that you need to follow before the Hungry Ghost Festival? Koda is going to find out, because she is now being haunted by who she thinks is her sister's spirit. But things start to unravel, and they go downhill from there, because you get to discover something even more horrific. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I really like the fact that it was horrific in many different ways. Not only does Cora deal with her depression, her being haunted by a actual ghost, by a hungry spirit, but also by the hate and the racism that has been going on throughout the entire book, and she has to deal with it. And I gave this book 5 stars. Moving on to the other two books that I read, they're by the same author, and it's a duology. And I need to move fast because I need to go out. But yeah, so we so I have here The Stolen Hair. This is by Holly Black. And then I also read the second book in the duology, which is The Prisoner's Throne. This is also by Holly Black. And so The Stolen Hair was super fun to read. It was super interesting. I really like Holly Black's fairies. I really like how she doesn't hesitate to make her fairies magical and like less human like. I really like that about her. And so we basically follow in this book, if you read the Crow Prince trilogy, we follow uh, Jude's little brother, whose name is Oak, and his journey to try and save his father, Modoc, um, because he is now considered a traitor to the crown and a danger towards Jude. But Og has seen the world in a different way, and he has some sort of respect towards his father, and so he's trying to save him from being killed. And that's basically the entire journey. But to be able to save his father, he needs to ally himself with the daughter of the other kingdoms where like his father is being kept, and that daughter is, what was her name? I forgot. Per usual. Nor? No, that's the name of the court. Nord Court. So the Nord Court are like very different ways. They're like known to be quite vicious, and they have like very sharp teeth. Sorend, that's her name. Sorend and O kind of come together because Sorend doesn't want her father and mother, also known as the king of the court, Nord Court, to continue to be ruling over this court. So Soren and O kind of have this like um same goal, and they kind of have to team up for Oak to save for Oak to save his father, and for Soren to um get rid of her evil parents. And in the second book, we continue to follow this story, but now Oak made a huge mistake, which was to lie to Soren about his actual goal. And so now Soren has Oak as a prisoner, and Jude is not happy. So we kind of see how everything starts to unravel, and what Soren is going to do to be able to not only save herself, her kingdom, but to kind of save her heart from Oak. Yeah, it was a fun read. It was so cute. And I gave The Stolen Hair, this one, the first book, 4 stars, and I gave The Prisoner's Throne, this, yeah, and I gave The Prisoner's Throne 3.5 stars, mainly because I felt like at one point the story kind of dragged out, and it kind of made me, I wasn't as excited as I was at the beginning. So that's it. And the other book that I read was the second book to what was it? I, when Among Crows. This is To Clutch a Razor. This is the second book in that duology. And again, we continue to follow Dimitri, but this time he has to go back to the society that he tried to leave from the first book. And that society, also known as his family, he has to go reunite with his family, but they're now a danger to him because Dimitri is now a Stroga, and it was a fun read. Again, we get to see Dimitri, Nico, and Ala, and everything that they have to go through to get out of meeting Dimitri's family safe and alive. Yeah, I give this book 5 stars. And the last book that I read, well, not the last one, the last romance that I read is Practice Makes Perfect, which I don't own, but this is the second book in the When in Rome series, and this is by Sarah Adams. And in this one, we basically follow Noah's younger sister, whose name is Anna, and how she's very awkward when it comes to talking with guys and going on dates with guys. And she's not just comfortable with other guys, but guys tend to be quite rude to her because they see her as someone who's really sweet, who doesn't have a backbone. And in comes Will, who is Amelia's bodyguard, and they form a friendship at first that later Anna is like, hey, you you seem to be someone who knows how to date. Help me be comfortable with men and be able to go on dates with them. And that's how their relationship starts, and it's such a fun thing, especially Will. I like Will. Um, he basically reads her favorite books and able to understand her a lot more. I like Will. I like him, and I give this book 4 stars. And the last book that I read is this thriller. This is by Noel W. Illy. Illy. This is Such Quiet Girls. This was a 3 stars. I feel like at some point it kind of like dragged out, but this is inspired by a real life event. Um, Basically, there's a this school driver who is like driving her kids to her house, but one day the road is closed. The usual road that she takes is closed, and she goes a different way. And in that way, there's a point where the road is also closed, but when she's trying to back out, there's a car, a random like um van blocks her way, and men come out of the truck, and they're asking her to open the door and to get everyone out, all the kids out of the truck, out of the school bus, and herself. They remove all their phones, and then they take them to a remote place where they are later placed underground. And that's basically the story. We follow her trying to get everyone safe out of the place, and as well as like the families who are going through this. And it was a fun, I wouldn't say it was a fun read. It was it had me over the edge of my seat. But like I said, I knew where the story was going because I knew about the real life case of this book. So at some point it was just like I knew where things were going to go. And yeah, it wasn't the best, but it also wasn't the worst. But if you want something that will have you over the edge of your seat, that will have you grasping for your pearls, I would recommend this one. This was a 3 star for me, and that was the last book I read in the month of April. Like I said, it was a lot. But yeah, I had a lot of really good reads. I had a lot of 5 stars and a lot of good fantasies. And I hope you guys read something I talked about in this book, or if you have read one of the books I talked about, please let me know down in the comments below. And I will see you all on the next one. Make sure to take care and drink lots of water. And I will see you all later. Take care. Bye bye.